I'm here with photographer Andrea Doss, who is from Wisconsin in the USA, and she is a StylePal user who is here to share her story with us. So, welcome, Andrea. It's so lovely to meet you.
Yes,
I
thank
would
you. It's lovely to be here.
good. I would like to kick off with hearing a little bit about your story. So, how did you first get into photography?
Yes, so I was always interested in photography as a child. I think the moment that I really fell in love with it was when I was 8 years old. I had a disposable camera that I took with me to summer camp, and I just really loved taking photos of everything. But the moment that I really got into working with couples and falling in love with that was the first wedding that I photographed when I was 19. It was one of my friends, his older sister was getting married, and I second shot that. And it was just a really free-spirited experience. You know, she was barefoot. They didn't invite a whole lot of guests. They just kind of focused on enjoying the day together and, the emotion of all of it. And I remember driving that home that night, and I just was like, this is what I want to do. You know, working with couples that are outdoorsy and they want, this down-to-earth experience. And so it didn't take long, though, after that, for me to realize that after I got into traditional bigger weddings that I wanted to kind of get back to that really down to earth experience with very few guests and everything. And, the couples that I worked with during that time were amazing, but I started just kind of feeling like I wanted something a little different. And so then in about 2019 was when I decided that I wanted to shift to elopements and intimate weddings, in those more adventurous outdoorsy landscapes. I knew that getting into that was going to require a lot of knowledge, a lot of expertise. I didn't want to put any couples in precarious positions with, the nature of elopements is very, there can be a lot of, unpredictable elements, let's say. And so I wanted to make sure that I was there for them and that I would be able to do something that could help them have a really incredible day. And so I took several years actually to just learn and grow and, get mentorship from, other large voices within the community and the industry. And so officially within 2022 was when I first pivoted to where I was booking only elopements. And it's the best decision I've ever made.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's so great to hear how people arrive at just that point where you say, this is my thing, and really
Yes,
own it and step into it.
absolutely.
Yeah, great. And like obviously this is a few years on now, at least 3 years on from that point when you specialize. Thinking about your current business, what do you love most about being a photographer now?
Oh, I love that question. I think honestly, it might kind of sound cliche, but just being with couples on a day where they're just so happy, that feeling is so magnetic. And being able to just walk with them from, the very beginning of the planning process to the day of when they're, kind of seeing this vision be realized, I think that's something that just really gets me every time. And it's just there's not really words to articulate how special it feels to be invited into someone's day like that. But I think it's something that it might sound cliche, but I just really am grateful for. And I'm so blessed to be able to do that. There's a lot of time that I spend behind a computer editing or working on my business or, posting blogs and things like that. But the part where I'm with the couple physically on their elopement day, they're just having the time of their life. I think that feeling is just second to none.
Brilliant. Okay, that's great. I mean, you sound like you're really passionate, which kind of brings me to my next question is what keeps you creatively inspired even several years into running your business?
That's a great question. I actually, a few years ago, I was headed for a place of just total burnout with creativity, and I had to take a break for a while because I just was not feeling creatively filled. I just was really struggling with a lot that was going on kind of in the world, and it just kind of put me in the position of not really feeling tied to what I was doing anymore. And so I had to take some time off. And during that time, I was trying to focus on recalibrating so that I could be the best that I could be for my couples on such an important day. And I've learned since then that, finding inspiration in elements just in my day to day is one of the biggest things that keeps me feeling very grounded and in the moment with my couples. So I actually draw a lot of inspiration from, just other mediums of art. So movies, TV shows, especially nature, of course, like that's the biggest thing that I find myself really, inspired by. So I think one of the biggest things that I always try to do, I mentioned before, being on the computer so much with what I do. Um, kind of that sense of getting outside and just slowing down, stepping away from the screen for a while. That always really helps me just kind of like get centered, take a deep breath, make sure that I am seeing the world around me in a way that I can then take and translate that into my couple's day. Because ultimately it's about telling their story. And if I'm not at my best with that and I'm not feeling inspired in my own life, in my day to day, it definitely influences the way that I photograph. So outside and then just other mediums of art always, kind of keeps me inspired.
Okay. I mean, I think that's also one of the beauties of specializing and niching down is that you're pretty much only photographing the kind of weddings that you want to photograph as well. So that's got to help, I guess, with feeling staying inspired.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's specializing and niching down can be really scary. But then once you do it, it's like, wow, I can't believe I didn't, think to do this sooner because then you just feel so, so connected to what you're doing. And it just becomes even more fulfilling.
I mean, I bang on about this all the time, but I think that couples are far more likely to not to buy into someone's expertise if they're a particular specialist in what they're looking to have done, and then people stop making decision based on price because they'd much rather work with an
Mhm.
expert. And I can see you knowing
Right.
you an expert in this style of wedding, you've got great passion for it. So I'm sure that comes across. So just thinking about kind of the craft of being a photographer now. Um, when you think about your portfolio and the ones that stand out to you, what do you think makes a great photo? How do you select the images from your portfolio where you think, oh, that's a keeper, that's got to go in?
I think honestly, the biggest thing is I'm always trying to make sure that I am capturing what's happening in the moment with my couples in a way that feels honest. I never want to pose them in such a way that doesn't feel right for them and doesn't feel aligned with who they are, or the way that they do things. Just kind of in their own relationship, they already know how they're spending time together. They know the ways that they like to, be playful and touch and spend time together. And it's one of those things that even in my questionnaires, when I'm kind of discussing things with my clients in that planning process, just kind of determining how they like to show love to each other. So, kind of making sure that that story is coming through authentically is a really big thing for me. And I think you have to have a close relationship at that point with your couple to be able to, kind of expect that
Yeah.
vulnerability from them. And so that's one of those reasons why, being heavily involved in the planning process is really big for me. And then, of course, on the day of, bigger than that, looking at the landscape itself, my couples pick these locations because they either just find them beautiful and they're inspired by them, or they might have like a personal connection tied to it. Um, Whether it's that they, went on their first trip together there, they got engaged there, or, they go there every summer on vacation, whatever it may be. They usually have some kind of connection to it that, makes them feel just kind of small within the world. And that's such a powerful feeling to experience. And so I always want to try to make sure that I'm not just letting the landscape speak for itself, because obviously, this landscape is stunning and beautiful, but they are within it and their story is being told within it. And so whether it's, the way that they are interacting together in that moment, how they're touching, whether the light, how that's playing into the scene and just kind of how they are experiencing the moment around them is something that I really try to do as much as I can. Um, yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, really, really good answer. And just thinking about kind of the weddings you've shot, is there one wedding that you've shot that's just or elopement that's just a real standout that you think, oh, that was just the dream gig?
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Every time that I think about this, like it was actually my first elopement that I did back in 2020. It was out in Nevada. And this couple is just amazing. They have been through so much together and, they wanted to have something just very intimate and very special and magical feeling. It was just the two of them, their officiant, and then me. And my husband was actually with me too, assisting, and he got to sign as one of their witnesses, which he still, like to this day, talks about it. He's like, that was so much fun, which is so sweet. But that day was just so cool. We were, just kind of off like this little spot off the road. So it wasn't even really like a super adventurous day. It was just more like this very exciting, playful,
Mm.
magical evening. And it was blue hour, and they were standing in front of this just gorgeous scene behind them. It was the mountains and the clouds, and it was just this really, really pretty view. And they were just so incredibly happy and in love. And it was very cool, especially because it was August of 2020. And so, this was kind of right in the middle of the pandemic. And so just to see, this happiness from them and just this joy to be starting the next chapter of their lives together, that is something I will never forget. And I think, with it being very soon after, just a couple years after I had started photographing big weddings, that like really tugged at my heartstrings. And I was like, I want to do more of this.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Wow. I love that. Um, okay. So, let's move on to talk about your journey in business. I always think
Mhm.
as a marketer, this is kind of one of my favorite parts of the interview. Just thinking way back to when you first started, what did you find the hardest when you started your business?
I think weeding through all the information that was out there was kind of daunting. I was very young when I first started, and primarily all of the education that was out there was on social media. And so I think having this sense of like back then it was, pre 2020, I think it was like 2018, 2019. And so the information that was out there felt very difficult to filter through because I think at the time a lot of us newer, younger photographers were very focused on those vanity metrics of followers and likes and all that stuff. And especially now with like being able to hide likes and share counts on social media, we didn't have that option back then. And so having the ability to just sort of look at all this different information and all these different educators and be able to say like, oh yeah, this makes sense. It was kind of overwhelming. And I think like it, the goalpost of success back then was different. So we were all, I feel like, very focused on, oh, if we get a lot of followers, that is the measure of success, or, if we have a ton of bookings, that's a measure of success. And so getting started in a space online that was very big and very we hadn't really figured out how to kind of filter through those voices yet.
Yeah.
And so that took me a long time. And then when I finally did, I kind of gave myself permission to be like, oh, I don't actually have to align with this person's teaching if I feel like it's not working for me, even if they do have six figures of followers. So I think that was probably the biggest thing in the beginning that really got to me was feeling like I was running this race where a ton of people were already, ahead
Yeah.
of me.
Yeah.
But figuring out that like I just need to kind of focus on what I'm doing and filter through just sort of taking all that advice with a grain of salt, and making sure that listening to the people with those platforms, we're not just taking their advice because they're well known in the industry, and that the things that they're saying are actually effective.
Yeah. Yeah. And would you say, I mean, is there anything that you think you'd do differently? I mean, I think you've kind of covered it there, which is to just kind of tread your own path, really.
Yeah, pretty much. I like how you put that because that's actually one of the big things that I, preach to my couples about, finding your own way, treading your own path, off the beaten path, type of wedding day. And so same thing, yeah, running a business, it really, when you're in an industry where there's kind of like a standard, when I started photographing big weddings first, there was kind of a way to do things, that was just sort of accepted. And, eventually I think people started feeling like there was more room for creativity,
Yeah.
and there was more room to kind of put yourself into your business and make it this really special, unique thing.
Mm.
And I think that was kind of eye-opening for me when I started seeing how other people were doing that. And it was just received so well because ultimately, like the one thing, that makes us different from other photographers if we're doing the same thing is that we have to have some kind of way to put ourselves out there and make sure
Mm.
that we are showing who we are because ultimately we're connecting with these couples, for a really emotional, important day, whether it's weddings or elopements, and they want to know who they're working with,
Yeah.
and they want to know the person that they're having this relationship with. And so I think that probably is a big thing for me at this point is just letting myself be myself with my
Mm.
couples. And back then it was a lot harder to do that, I think.
Yeah. Great. I really like that. Just thinking on a practical level, Is there one thing, would you say that what's the kind of one thing that's made the biggest difference to your business? And I'm talking more about like think something you've invested in or a system you've used. What kind of
Mhm.
practical thing would you say has made a difference for you?
Yeah, in a practical standpoint, I honestly would say that the marketing tools that I use, so essentially the anything that makes my business what it needs to be for people to see it. So essentially, my website, the way that I present myself there is probably the biggest thing because my website is the only, marketing channel that I actually own.
Yeah.
So, social media could go away tomorrow and I would have lost everything, or I mean, I've seen so many people who, their accounts get hacked or they
Yeah.
get their account banned for some, weird reason. And, they just any momentum that they have built strictly on social media is just gone. And they have to start from scratch. And that is kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
And I feel like it should be terrifying because, we need to have some kind of way to present ourselves to the world and to, potential clients that, is ours and we have complete control over. And so, honestly, my website, practically speaking, is the most important thing in my business because it allows me to just continue to grow and to build that authority, in the eyes of Google and the crawling robots and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It takes so much time, and it is kind of a long game with things like SEO, but it definitely makes a huge difference in my confidence with my business. Instagram especially is something I really still struggle with. I've always struggled with it. And, posting, I'm not motivated to do it most of the time. And, having 20 images in in a post at this point, it's like it was so much easier when you only had to pick one. But with my website, it's like I can spend a couple of hours working on, a section of something that I want to communicate my brand messaging in a specific way. And, that could be the pivotal thing that
Mm.
takes somebody from questioning, well, I don't know if she's really who we're looking for. Like, I just don't know yet. I don't have enough information to, oh, yeah, because of this thing, this is who we want. That kind of gets people
Yeah.
over that obstacle and that line of uncertainty. So being able to do that with my website, that is just gold for my business.
I mean, I could, if I could have, you've said the exact thing that I'm really passionate about. It's as if we paid you to say that, but honestly,
Which you didn't.
of course not. Because we've just finished teaching a masterclass about conversion, and it really does come down to removing risk. So people
Mhm.
don't book when they're unsure about something, not because they don't like you or they don't actively choose you. And what you're saying is being able to inject your brand message and really craft some of the kind of details and things you put across is what makes people go, oh, that's me. This person is
Mhm.
like 100% for me. So, and that really comes across in your website as well, by the way.
Thank you.
Great. Well, this brings us on to my next set of questions about your website. And I really love your website. I love you've used like kind of a GIF in the header, and there's
Yeah.
some other really lovely touches which really make it feels like it kind of the experience comes alive.
Mhm.
What do you want people to feel when they land on your website?
I think honestly, the biggest thing that I want to portray with my website is that people don't have to feel stressed. If they're landing on my website, the reason for that is that they're looking for an elopement photographer. That part is obvious, but when they get there, the immediate feeling that I want to evoke for couples who are considering working with me, considering eloping, wherever they're at in that process, is I want them to just feel at ease. I want them to feel like they can take a deep breath and like, oh, this is it. This is what we want. We might a lot of couples just have like a very vague idea of what they're looking for their day. And then some people have like a really specific dream that they could bullet point out all of the things that they want, which is fantastic. But, for the couples that are coming to my site and they're like I want to feel like someone else can help us do this. I don't want to feel like we have to stress and go through this whole process in like a difficult way. And so that's the very first emotion that I want them to feel because truly that is something I pride myself on is, being able to put couples at ease and just kind of hold their hand through this whole process and just make sure that they feel really good about the process of planning their elopement. There's so many cliches about, wedding planning being stressful and it's just like a whole thing. And I want to help promote the idea that that doesn't have to be the way that it is. And that, if you're choosing to have a different kind of wedding day, you should have a different kind of planning process. And so just making sure that they know, yes, the day is going to be beautiful. And yes, it's going to be so fun and free and exciting, and the photos will be great. But ultimately, first and foremost, you can plan this day and be excited for it without all of this stress.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. Such a nice sentiment as well. Um, so what one thing I really loved hearing you say is, oh, I can spend a couple of hours like improving something on my website, which tells me you are quite hands-on. And I know you built your website yourself using one of our
Yes.
templates. I'm just interested to know, have you always used WordPress? Before you did this most recent build of your website, what were you using?
No, it's a funny story. I started on Squarespace, and I really enjoyed Squarespace for the first, gosh, I don't even know what year is it now? 2026. I used Squarespace since 2018. I tried to switch to WordPress 3 times. This third time it finally stuck. But the
Okay.
other 2 times, I don't think I was in a place mentally to understand what needed to be done with it. And I don't know if it's just because I was still young or if I just kind of like didn't get it from like a tech standpoint, but oh, those first 2 times, like I cried. It was so stressful. But the third time with Style Cloud, it was just like, oh, like I was laughing at myself while I was building my website. Even just last year is when I finally made the switch. And I was like, this is so easy. Like, what was it that, made me struggle with this so much? But, having Style Cloud on board really made a difference. But, with Squarespace, as much as I loved it, there was a lot of tech related stuff and back end things that I just didn't have control over,
Hmm.
and it was impacting user experience. And so, if a couple wanted to come to my website, I could design it to look beautiful and that would be great. And, there were maybe a few little workarounds here and there for some of the more fun touches, and animations and things like that. But and that would have been fine. But then you would have something like, too many JavaScript things, and it just was, there was nothing I could do about it, and it was slowing down my site. And it got to the point eventually where I was just like, I really feel like switching to WordPress, especially with the improvements that it would do for SEO, for me on Google was really big. And so I finally, took the plunge and I did it. And I spent like a week every day for like 8 hours just
Yeah.
creating my site, focus on getting my domain set up and hosting and all these things. And by the end of it, I felt like, that week got me to a point where I was like, okay, this is pretty good. Like this is something that I feel really good about and I feel good putting out. And then I've just been working on it consistently ever since, just to kind of get it more polished and, add those touches that really feel elevated, so that my clients can feel confident working with me. Um, but yeah, making that switch was absolutely pivotal, and it did make a difference in my SEO as well. I did actually see my rankings and my numbers go up quite a bit.
Well, that's what we like to hear. That's great. That's great news. Yeah. And I fully think, also probably timing wise, where WordPress has gone or developed in the last even 2 to 3 years is significant. Like even the base infrastructure is so much easier to use. I would
Mhm.
definitely say in terms of ease of use, it's now equivalent to Squarespace or something like that. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you kind of made the move and
Yes,
got
me too.
great news. So just thinking about kind of looking forward now, we've talked about how you've built your business and the decisions you've made to specialize and get where you are now. So what's next for you? What are you excited about, doing next, either creatively or professionally?
Yeah, I think, the thing that excites me most is just I've been working a lot on my mindset toward what I do, and trying to focus more on slowing down, and being in that moment with my couples. I talk to them a lot about how eloping gives you this opportunity to really just be in the moment, be
Mhm.
present, feel just totally alive, unhindered. And I think as much as I like give that message out to my couples, I a lot of times forget it myself.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because when I'm like working with my couples in the moment, and then even like leading up to their elopement through the planning process, I just get very excited. And I'm like, oh, I want to do all these things. And I have all these ideas. And like my brain is just bouncing all over the place. So for me, I think, taking that same advice and actually focusing on being centered in the moment and just, especially when it comes to composing images for them and telling their story, that is so huge for me that I want to make sure that I'm not just taking as many photos as possible and then picking the best of the bunch and then sending those to
Yeah.
them after, they're edited and polished and cleaned up. But with them, having that vulnerability with me on one of the most important days of their life, I want to give them the same sense of calm
Yeah.
and, kind of project that calmness to them so that they can feel good and we're working together well. It's, really a collaboration to create these beautiful images with them to tell the story of their day. So I've been doing a lot to try and just calm myself in, that moment to be able to just
Yeah.
step back, look at what's happening, and, instead of, like I said, just taking a bunch of photos of what's happening,
Yeah.
kind of working with them in a way that feels guided but still hands off and trying to kind of find a
Yeah.
balance between those two things so that, they can enjoy their day, but they're still getting guidance from a professional
Yeah.
who wants to help them create really good images.
Yeah. Well, that's such an, that's going to benefit to keep you excited and creative as well. I can
Mhm.
see how that would work. Great. Now I'm just going to finish with two or three very quick fire questions, quite fun ones. Um,
Okay.
okay. Excluding people getting married, what's your favorite thing to photograph?
That's a great question, excluding people getting married. Honestly, just nature. I think I do love to take photos when I'm on vacation with my husband Seth, and like I just take pictures of everything and it's a lot of fun. So I think the thing I already do minus the couple.
Yeah. Perfect. Just kind of practice it. Well, I suppose you're always looking at the landscape and thinking
Mhm.
how the shapes it makes and how you use it as a
Absolutely.
frame, aren't you? So you just
My
can't switch
brain
it off.
never turns off. Yeah, all the time.
Well, honestly, my kids they laugh at me because wherever we go into like a restaurant or a coffee shop, I'm always looking at the branding or their website. This
I
is
do that
terrible.
too.
Yeah, yeah, you can
I'm
never
like,
switch
that
it off.
billboard doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, where if you could photograph an elopement anywhere in the world, where would it be? Your dream
Oh, that's a good
location?
question. I've been really obsessed with the idea of doing an elopement in Alaska on a glacier.
Ooh, okay.
I haven't photographed any elopements internationally yet. I'm still kind of waiting to see if that's like a down the road thing because I
Yeah.
mean, we just have so many beautiful places here that, I haven't gotten to experience yet. But I think that's really the one that I just keep being drawn to of like, oh, that'd be so cool to do that.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I have seen I've even seen a few shoots lately of people like at weddings on like people standing on
Yeah.
ice floes and things. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
seen
It's
that.
so cool.
Okay, and when you're not shooting, what are you doing? What will we find you doing?
Most of the time I'm doing things outside if I can, but if I can't, like right now, the weather is absolutely horrible here in Wisconsin. It's
Yeah.
so cold. I love to read. My husband and I love to watch movies. We're big soccer fans. I have been trying to do more hobbies that are more tactile, so I've been getting more into needle felting recently. So that's pretty fun too. But if we're outside, it's going to be, hiking, riding our bikes. We've been getting more into rock climbing as well, so just things like that.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Yeah,
It's
I
fun.
love that. Great. Well, that is it. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. I've loved chatting to you, and you're obviously really passionate about what you do, and it comes across in your website, and and I can tell you've got great passion for your business. So yeah, it's been
Yes, thank you.
lovely hearing all about it. Thank you so much.